Have you ever stopped to think about where your belief in about money comes from? The way we price our services, how we manage our revenue, and even the how we define success it isn't just about the numbers. It's something that is deeply rooted in our subconscious that we don't even realize. We have absorbed something as children that it now plays into our adult life without even knowing it. So today we're going to talk about how your childhood money mindset could be shaping your business growth without you even realizing it. Welcome to the Hobby to Profitability podcast. We're all about figuring out what it really takes to build a successful and thriving business. I'm Jacqueline Green, marketing nerd, AI consultant, and entrepreneur who's been through it all. My goal is to help you get the strategies, the tools, and the mindset shift you need to grow your business without the stress and confusion. Every week, we'll dive into real, unfiltered side of entrepreneurship, the mindset shifts, the strategic moves, and the unexpected lessons that come with building a business. We'll talk about what actually works and what doesn't, how to navigate those changes and challenges that you face, and how to create a business that really fits into your life. If you're ready to turn your passion into profit without the overwhelm, you're in the right place. Hey there, welcome back to Hobby to Profitability. I'm Jacqueline Green, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about something that's deeply personal to me and something that I didn't even realize existed. To be quite frank with you. And we're talking about money mindset, specifically how the subconscious beliefs we develop in childhood shape the way we approach our pricing, our profitability, and even our financial decision making as a business owner. Now, we know that some of the things we grew up as a child, some of the mindsets, some of the trauma, have shaped us as people, but it also shapes us as business. And I share today my own personal story. And I did not realize how much of that really impacted me until I started taking a deeper dive into it. I started thinking about some of the things that I remember as a child. Now, first, remember, I grew up in the 70s and 80s when money wasn't really discussed. And so a lot of things I learned about money were more from just watching the people around me and seeing how they interacted with money. And it was extreme differences on both sides. First of all, my parents divorced when I was very, very young. I was just a little over a year. They were two completely different people. My mother came from a pretty well-to-do family. My father came from a not well-to-do family, actually quite poor to be exact. And so how they approach money, I'm sure, was a huge problem within their marriage, though I've never talked to either one of them about it. I don't know how it could not be a part of their marriage, but how they treated money and how I was impacted by that. And then to add another level onto that, I had a grandmother on my father's side who has an amazing story as far as how she dealt with money, but how she dealt with money also impacted me. I don't know if that makes sense. So let's just get into it. So where we get those stories are. So for me, I had a mother on one side that spent money. She divorced my father, married another gentleman who had some wealth. He had built several businesses. She would later divorce him and marry someone else who had a good career. Fast forward, she would end up in her retirement age with no money whatsoever. Zero. She spent it all, every dime. And so now she lives off Social Security. So here's somebody who had a good career, worked really hard, made a lot of money, it's gone. Then on the other side of that, my father, who I actually moved in with when I was 10 years old, and he raised me from there on, was very tight with money. He was a pipe fitter, blue collar guy, did well for himself, but that isn't exactly the career where you're making multi-million dollars. If he would have gone out on his own, started his own company, he would have done a lot better. But he worked for two companies most of his career and worked really hard for them, and they rewarded him by all means and paid him good salary, but It wasn't like he was really doing, starting a business, growing real wealth with that. And then you had my grandmother, who played a big role in my life. And my grandmother was a factory worker. She did not get her GED till 1970. So right before I was born, the year before I was born, she finally got her GED. She had dropped out of high school. She was from the hills in Tennessee and had dropped out, had lots of trauma in her childhood that makes mine look like nothing. But she ended up working in a factory. She took care of my grandfather, was quite a bit older. He passed away eventually when I was about 6. I was in first grade. 6, and she got a life insurance policy on him, about $70,000. What she did with that $70,000, which doesn't seem like a lot now, but this was late 70s, late 70s. What she did was she started investing. She opened up an investment account. Now, at this point in time, you have to remember that she couldn't even get a credit card. I remember in high school, she went to the bank to get a credit card, and they denied her and wanted my father as a man to co-sign for her. And that was in the 80s. So here's a woman who didn't get a GED till 1970 and then turned around and started investing money. She opened an investment account, and what she would do was she would watch the business news. There wasn't 24/7 business news like there is today, but she studied, and she studied businesses, and she identified what businesses she thought. She typically would invest in blue chip stocks, so really stable stocks. Coca-Cola, she actually bought Apple at $1 something and held on to it until my father inherited it. And he held on to it until it came to me. So she invested in really nice companies. What happened through that, though, was that she, even though she was a factory worker, she retired at 65. She would die at 73, but she actually died a millionaire. And not only did she die a millionaire, she gave tips, business tips and stock tips to people she worked with at the factory. And at her funeral, these guys actually came to the funeral and were talking to us about how she'd given them great tips and had really helped them in their retirement savings as well. So it's a pretty amazing story. However, she was the tightest person I think I've ever met in my life. We found journals and journals and journals of every single dime that she had spent over the years. She logged it all, every single thing. It was crazy. There's no way I would ever be that way. I don't think that meticulous, but I'm also not tight. And in the same thing, I feel sorry for her sometimes because even though she died with this huge sum of money, and she died in 2000, the beginning of 2001, that was a big sum of money for her living in Indianapolis. She never enjoyed it. She didn't go on trips. If she went on a trip like to visit her brother in South Carolina, she usually had me or my dad drive her there. She didn't fly a lot. She didn't experience a lot outside of her world of Tennessee and Indiana. Those are pretty much all the areas she stayed in. She talked about money and the economy, and I remember her driving in the car with her and her complaining, and this would have been around 92, 93. The economy had kind of taken a downfall at that time. And I was in college, and I remember her talking about how bad the economy, and she was going on and on and on. And I had headphones on, listening to music, trying to drown her out, until finally I just had to say something that she was depressing me. Like, I was about to graduate college, and all she was talking about is how bad the economy was. And it was really hard for me. And so I explained that to her, and she stopped talking about it. But it was a constant thing of her always talking about the economy and money, and not in a positive way. So then you had my father, who really didn't talk about it. He ignored it. So he inherited the money from his mother, and pretty much it just sat in those investments. And my stepmother came along when I was 18, and she was utterly amazing and still is amazing to this day in investing money. Again, she is tight, but they did enjoy some of their money, and she continues to, even though my father has passed. But it really is interesting on that impact. My husband and I grew up on the south side of Indianapolis. Love my home. I love my hometown, always been my home. I've lived in Colorado now almost 30 years. Actually, I hit 30 years last week. But Indiana, there is a part of me that will always be in Indiana. I'm a Hoosier deep down, nothing about it. But in the area which we grew up, it was a lot of blue collar. Both my husband and I came from families that really thought, okay, we're doing well. You work for a company, you're loyal to a company, you stay with that company for a long period of time, and you're rewarded. You don't go start businesses. You're thankful for what you have, and that's the best you're going to do. More so, I think what he remembers than what I remember. But the one thing I did learn from growing up in this type of environment was my father was very good about telling me I could do pretty much anything that I wanted to, and that I was a survivor. So they were really good things. I don't want it to sound like it's really bad. But the impact on the money that, we didn't drive new cars. We didn't live in a fancy house. We lived in a very nice house that took my father a long time to redo himself. So he was very handy and do a lot of the construction on the house. So we lived in a nice house, but it wasn't big. It was a nice little bungalow that he had added on to the back of. Again, it was south side of Indianapolis. Those ideas of money, when I got out into the corporate world, there was a point when I was in corporate that my stepmother said something about how much my father made. And I realized that I made a lot more money than he did. And that was really startling to me and disheartening to me because I knew how hard he worked. And now we're in totally different fields, but that was just something that hit me really hard. Then when I went out to start my own business, that was a completely different thing altogether. And I was actually really afraid to tell my father because of, how I grew up and how you work for the same company and you stay loyal and you don't change jobs and blah, blah, blah. But interestingly enough, he actually was very encouraging, like he was most of my life, and really encouraged and could see why I wanted to do this. He did not, and nor did my stepmother, who I am very close to, really understand all the time some of the struggles I went through as a business owner, but they really did support it. But in that, I didn't have anyone to ask, how do I do this? How do I grow? How do I scale? I didn't have that in my background and family. And I didn't realize until more recently that a lot of those money things that I remember, the conversations I remember as a child, the things that happen, the situations between and the differences between my mother and my father and what happened at one house and what happened in the other house, that all shaped me. Now you might be wondering, okay, these are common money stories, right? But how did they shape you and how did they shape your business? It wasn't until recently that I really started looking at this and realized that even though I had tried to walk away from that mindset, it still played a huge role. So how does that play a big role? Let's be real. Random marketing tactics aren't going to grow your business. It's like throwing spaghetti at a wall, hoping the spaghetti will stick. If you're tired of spinning your wheels, or in this case, throwing spaghetti, then it's time to take a smarter approach. The Marketing Momentum Workshop is built for small business owners just like you who need real results, not just more marketing noise. In one 4-hour session, we will work with you to pinpoint the best strategies and create a roadmap for your business that's going to help it grow. Take the first step. Book your free marketing health check now at behindthedesignco.com and let's get your business moving in the right direction. Well, depending on your stories you grew up with, you end up developing limiting beliefs. There's a scarcity mindset. And this is one that I've actually really struggled with unknowingly. And I could give you a million examples, but a scarcity mindset where there's not enough. I'm in a field where there are a lot of marketing people. I started this podcast. There's a lot of podcasts out there. And so with a scarcity mindset, we often think that there's not enough out there. Oh, somebody's already done this. There's no room for me. Or when it comes, it's rooted in that message of we can't afford this, or money doesn't grow on trees. If you heard those sayings, which I heard that a lot growing up, how does that work within your business and that whole scarcity? Money's a scarcity thing. It goes into your mindset. And so as a business, we look at that. It comes into, are you underpricing the services that you offer? You may feel guilty for charging a certain amount. There's a lot of business owners I've talked to over the years that hit a point within their business that all of a sudden they turned up and charged a lot more, and people they're paying it. And they're like, wow, I'm getting paid this X amount of money for doing something that I was willing to do for a lot less. It's like they've arrived or something. We've all kind of struggled with this, I believe. And so when we want to raise our rates, or when we talk to somebody who maybe we think, oh, I don't think they can afford my services, so I'm going to lower my price for them, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And when you look at that rationally, it's like, that's dumb. And that also comes through if there's a fear of investing in ourselves, that spending money, especially when you're first getting started and you don't have any revenue coming in, or there's no available, you may not even be taking a salary. The idea of giving your money that you're earning to a coach or a mentor program or some sort of education is completely backward in some ways, that we believe that investing in ourselves is just, or in coaching is a waste of money, not an actual investment to improve how much we make. And it is that. It is when we invest in coaching programs, when we invest in the right coaching programs, when we invest in education, advancing our education, you are investing in your future and in the future money that you're going to be making. We also look at overworking instead of scaling. This is one that I've really struggled with, where you hesitate to spend money, or you believe you have the right, you've earned every dollar in sweat equity, and rather than building systems and generating income efficiently, you're just working yourself to the bone. You're working and scraping by for every single dollar because you don't know any better. You think, oh, well, if I'm not making enough, I need to work even harder. This is something that I have struggled with. I like systems and processes, but I'm constantly pushing myself to work harder and harder and harder. There is a fear deep down that at some point that I won't have money. I joke with my friends a lot and coaches that I've had that I have this reoccurring dream or fear that I'm going to be living down in an 80s blazer down by the river. You know, Chris Farley's bit about the van from Saturday Night Live, it's sort of that, but it's in a 80s blazer, and I'm going to be living in there, me and my 2 Rottweilers. So this is so far from the truth, but this is what that fear, that mindset, my mother really having no money in her later years has really impacted me in the sense that I don't want to be like that. I want to build a $10 million business. That is my goal. I want to build something so that I don't have to do that, so that I can travel around and see my grandbabies, that I can take them and do things with them, that I can be active in my later years. This also, that money is scarcity mindset impacts how we hire. If we're willing to hire, a lot of times as when you're hiring that first hiring person, the first full-time person, you have to take the pay cut to bring them on. That happens a lot in business where you're taking the cuts of somebody else and then you scale and build back up and your income, but you're the one that they have to get paid before you get paid. And that's a really risky feeling. And if you have that scarcity mindset, all these things become difficult when it comes to scaling. Now, another mindset that's completely different is the easy come, easy go mindset. And this is rooted in that idea of, oh, just enjoy it while you have it. I have an aunt and uncle. My uncle has since passed, and my grandmother got all aggravated with them when I was a child because she told my aunt that she needed to save money. And my aunt's like, we have plenty of time to make money. Well, now she's in her 80s and she's broke. So she didn't save any. But in business, when we think that way, we're making money, but we're not necessarily managing it well. And I'm not talking about you invested in something, in a software, in a program that just didn't meet your expectations. I'm talking that you're constantly making decisions and struggling with just budgeting, knowing where the money's going, understanding how much money you're truly making, being inconsistent and financially unstable. And so at any time in your business, you don't know exactly where you're at. This might be part of the mindset issue. This also impacts you on planning long term. Instead of setting money aside for taxes, growth, emergencies, you spend it on what is in your account today. And from a business standpoint, if you're wanting to scale your business, that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. You have to set money aside to grow. You can't grow without money. You just can't. You need to set those monies aside and invest in the future as well as today. There's also, when you have an easy come, easy go mindset, it's feeling resistant to save or invest. So you believe that you can just you can out earn your spending habits, or you're not saving for retirement. Small business owners do this all the time. They don't spend retirement. I talk about this about a client of mine who was an interior designer. She had spent 30 some years building her business. And this is several years ago, before COVID. I met her she was looking for somebody to do some software work for, some 3D software drafting work for. And so it just happened I did that. And so I took on her project on the side. We got talking. I really, really liked this woman. She was a smart cookie. And she wanted to sell her business. But when we really started digging into her business, 30 years, almost 35 actually, she didn't have a business. The business was her. She had no systems, no processes. She had nothing to sell. She thought she had clients she could sell, but that wasn't something. They were working with her based on her, not based on a business. And that was a real sad realization, because I remember the day when she told me, she goes, I just spent everything. I never thought about retiring. I never saved a single dime. Well, then COVID hit, and it really hit her hard, because a lot of her projects dried up and she hadn't saved. And here she is, 65 years old, and had no money. So that can also, play into that easy come, easy go, thinking, okay, I can always earn more. But things happen. Life does not always go the way you expect to go. The next mindset is money equals worth mindset. This is rooted in the message that you work really hard to deserve success. So this can look like in business, struggling with imposter syndrome. I don't know very many women who don't struggle with imposter syndrome when it comes to business. It's almost like you're constantly feeling like you're proving yourself all the time. Every single move, you have to convince yourself, convince other people. When you're expanding your offers, it's like you're constantly trying to prove that you can do this. Oftentimes, I find that I struggle with imposter syndrome, thinking I'm not smart enough to do that reach goal, or I'm not ready yet. It's not that I'm not smart enough. I'm not ready yet to go that far. I haven't learned enough to try that. That is something that I don't think a lot of men struggle with. I think that's more of a woman thing, or at least not in the men that I've been around. And so if you're a man listening to this, I mean, no disrespect. But really, we hold ourselves back instead of taking that leap when we have that, money equals worth. Over delivering and undercharging is another one. Now, there's a level of you should always over deliver to your clients, but this is to the point where you're actually giving away free service. It's not like one little thing. It's a lot of things that you're doing to justify your price. Like you're trying to justify how much you charge somebody by giving them extra and not being secure in the amount that you provided. Feeling guilty about raising your prices. Are you raising your prices? You should be raising your prices on a consistent basis. Reviewing your prices at least annually is really important. If you're getting started and you're offering new products, as you offer new products and you get testimonials, you can start raising your prices. And so you want to not feel guilty, but that's how it plays in. That is, you increase it, you might feel greedy. Like people will stop buying from you. There's a fear here. There's also an avoiding financial transparency. And this is where you're uncomfortable with your revenue numbers. It's too personal and it's tied to your self-worth, so you don't share it with anyone. This can manifest in things like you don't hire a bookkeeper because you're afraid that your books are such a mess, that you don't want anybody to see what a mess you really are. Or you don't hire the CPA and you try to do your taxes on your own because you're afraid that they're going to see and look down on you. That's how it can kind of play into money. And that also is a mindset issue, and how it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay that your books, especially if you're not a bookkeeper like me, it's okay that they're a mess. That's why you hire someone to help you. But the money you're making or not making does not reflect on your worth and what you have to offer the world. The last mindset is you need permission to succeed. This one is rooted in don't be selfish. Money changes people. A lot of times, especially growing up and even still to this day, rich people, the so-called rich people, are just something that is out there. We're not one of those people. Mind you, that my family, at least on my father's side, has done very well in investing and financially. And I hate to break it to them, they kind of are those rich people. Even though they came from blue collar, they did really, really well investing their money. But there's always that, oh, we're not like those people mentality. And what does that look like within your business? Well, it's waiting for external validation. You're hesitant to launch. You're hesitant to raise your prices or take risks that you don't feel like you are ready for. And so you need permission to do that. Like you're not meant to be one of those rich people sort of thing, which is it's so utterly ridiculous when you think about it logically. If you have a great product and you're offering something, people are going to pay for that if it helps solve a big problem that they're having. So this also might manifest that you need a second opinion on spending money or investing in something. Maybe you're hesitant to buy a program and you're going to your husband or your partner and saying, should I do this? And you're being wishy-washy about it. One, always follow your gut. And two, if you really believe that's going to help you, then that's something you should invest in from a financial standpoint. This also plays out in avoiding visibility. Your subconscious, your fear of making more money will invite more criticism, judgment, jealousy, a change in your relationships. Yeah, in some cases that does happen, but that is what it is. If that changes a relationship with somebody, then that was obviously somebody that didn't need to be in your life. And so you have to kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at that. But just to avoid visibility, and I see this time and time and time again, is I don't want to be visible. And it's not something you're consciously saying to yourself. I don't want to be visible because people might criticize me or they might judge me, even though that visibility is imperative for you to grow and scale your business. So if you're hesitant right now to create videos, to do the thing in marketing you're wanting to do, to speak on a stage, to go to networking events, you might be struggling with this mindset of worrying what other people think over you. So I go through each one of these because I'm wanting you to recognize the different patterns. That's the first step. If you think back through your childhood and really search for what were some of the things being talked about. When you're sitting in the back seat of the car and you're not half paying attention, but you are paying attention and you're listening to your parents talk, what were those things? What were the stories around you? What were being discussed? unknowingly, those could be affecting how you're scaling your business. So now, how do we shift? How do we shift that money mindset and build that financial confidence? This is an important thing. This does not happen overnight. I can tell you from my own journey, there are days that I still to this day struggle with it. I wake up in a fear that I'm going to live in an 80s blazer down by the river and have no money. It is a significant fear of mine that I'm going to run out of money. I know I'm not. I know that I'm really good at what I do, but there's a fear there. So how do we? Well, awareness, of course, is the first step. Isn't that always the case? We always have to dig deep and really look at, okay, what's causing that fear? So when that fear comes up for me, I have to settle myself and talk to myself a little nicer and just be like, it's going to be okay. You are smart. You're going to get through this. You know how to do this, and you're shifting that mindset. You're shifting it by giving it positive energy and really talking the negative talk down, essentially, kind of pushing that away. Now, here's some ideas that might help you. Identify and write your money stories. This is a big thing that I kept hesitating. I kept feeling there's something inside of me stopping me. And when I started digging deeper and understanding that those mindsets that were developed as a child impacted me, that I could write the story and be like, okay, this is how this impacted me. And now I'm looking at it. Now, is that actually true? Is there a pattern that I just inherited? Is that fact or is that fiction? And then I replace it with a new empowering belief in the sense that you say, instead of saying money is scarce, you can think of it more as money is a tool to grow if I invest wisely. And so we're really kind of changing that mindset. If what we experienced as children isn't necessarily the path that we are creating as business owners. The next thing is getting comfortable with pricing and understanding what you are worth. This is by far one of the hardest things. How to price yourself, how to share that price, how to get someone to pay the price is, to me, really scary. And I think there are a lot of you out there as well. And it is probably when I was teaching, it was one of the biggest questions I would get from students. Well, how much will I make? How much do I charge? What does that look like? So look at your pricing this way. Reflect on the value you are bringing to your customer. What are those pain points? And what are those pain points being solved worth to someone? It's not just how much time you're spending to help your client, but it's how much that pain point being solved helps them either save time, save money, or help their customers better. Think about that and remember that people who value what you offer will pay what you ask. If you are really solving a problem for them that is painful, they will pay you what you are worth if you solve that. The third thing I want to recommend is really building a wealth mindset. We've heard of growth mindsets, but this is more of a wealth mindset. Instead of focusing always on making money, let's focusing on managing, investing, and growing it. The very first step of this is understanding where you are financially. It's staying on top of your financial situation, knowing at any given point how much money you're making, what products are bringing in what revenue is generated from that, what profits are generated from that, how many you have to sell to make your numbers. Understanding just basic cash flow and how it runs through your business and where you stand at any given time is critical for a successful and scalable business. The next thing is you need to create systems that allow you to save, reinvest, and pay yourself properly in a business. I think of it as thirds often. A third should go to paying for overhead employees, a third paying for you, and a third paying for investing in the future. Now, that is a big, general, broad thing, but if you kind of think of it in that way, those are your three buckets. it'll help you create a service. Now, thirds may not be exactly correct for you, but that's how I think about it. How much is it to pay for all of our overhead, all of our skill, all of our supplies, and so forth? How much is your salary? And then how much are we setting aside for future investments so that we can grow the business? Then also surround yourself with mentors and peers who encourage a healthy financial mindset. You should have a bookkeeper, you should have a CPA, and you should have a financial advisor. Now, my financial advisor, if he's actually listening, will laugh because half the time he tells me to do something and I usually do the complete opposite. Not always, but sometimes. So he probably would tell me that you need to listen to your financial advisor more. But it is important that you put people around you who are smarter than you are when it comes to money, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can ask for help from, and that you can grow past where your childhood mind was at. So those are my tips. At the end of the day, you got to think about money differently or it'll ruin your business. Cash flow is important, but the exciting thing is you have the option. You have an option to rewrite the script. You can do it differently from this day forward, but starting with understanding who you are and how you got to this point, and then deciding, I'm going to do this differently. For me, looking at my family, love my family to death, love my father. He is and was one of the most amazing people on the face of the earth, hardest worker you ever come about, just incredibly smart. But understanding that I know he wants me and I know I want to be even more and do better. And that's called building my own business. It's something that he did not want to do or wasn't equipped to do, whether by choice or not. I know he supports every ounce of me moving in this direction and working really hard to do that. And that's okay. And I'm good with that. And so it's really coming to terms with that. So if this really resonated with you, if it was helpful for you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm usually hanging out there. You can also, if you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment there if you're watching this video. And share what your biggest takeaway is. Share anything you want. Also share this with somebody else that you think might be struggling with their own financial mindset and how it might be impacting their business. All right, and next episode, we're going to dive into the simple business plan and what you actually need to succeed. So if you're kind of running by the seat of your pants and don't really have a strategy in place for your business, we're going to kind of talk through that in the next episode of how you can build a plan. And I'm not talking 50 pages. I'm talking 2. What does that look like, and how are we going to scale your business? How are we going from 0 to $1 million? That is the point of Hobby to Profitability. So I hope you'll tune in. Please be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode of Hobby to Profitability. Thank you for listening to the Hobby to Profitability podcast with Jacqueline Green. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend. You can learn more about Behind the Design at our website at behindthedesignco.com. And be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn or subscribe to the Behind the Design channel on YouTube for more great business growth strategies. Now, I'll see you next time.